And thanks again to Gensler and Artisan for the accommodations and food. It's seriously, I've been happy with Rossi's and a bowl of peanuts. Okay, so I'm really truly humbled to be standing here and talking to you guys, and I'm actually just in awe that anybody wants to hear me talk about my design or my work. But I quickly want to give you a little bit about me. I'm Mike McQuade. I'm an artist, designer, and illustrator, and I try and mix those things up as much as possible. Growing up, I had an amazing mother who encouraged me to draw constantly, and I think that's why sketching is such a staple in my process. It's just comforting. And I used to skip baseball practice to go skating and draw, and that really pissed my uncles off. I went to college in Philadelphia, and I was told to quit being a graphic designer by a very talented teacher. I'm glad I didn't listen, but that wasn't the first time I'd be humbled. Moved out to Chicago about 4 years ago. This town is great, and yeah, so that's a little bit of a backstory. Talent. To be honest, I don't have any of this. Anything I do that's good has come through sheer hard work and pure dedication to this craft. If I relied solely on talent, I'd have a portfolio full of incredibly bad work. And this is a logo I just wrapped up for a baby garment company called Itty Bitty. I love the little I and the B in the safety pin. But I think if you were to take this logo and the last logo and put it together, you would never think in a million years it came from the same designer. And I'm sure next year I'll hate this logo. And so design for me is of the moment, and the only way forward is constant self-critique and evaluation. I can't just accept things as they are. I have to find ways around them. So since talent is this elusive thing that I can't count on, I have to pay attention to my process. And it makes my work consistently better. And I found that every project I've done that's worth talking about has shared this process. It usually starts with interest. If I'm not totally interested in what I'm designing or illustrating for, either the possibility, the project, the organization, the publication, the article, etc., then I feel like I won't be passionate about what I'm doing for the client, and in turn doing a disservice. And in my experience, clients would rather you be passionate about what they're doing, selling, making, and back that up with research and thoughtful design, as opposed to trying to dazzle them with something that they don't want or need. That's usually followed by obsessing. I do a good amount of research, or if I'm illustrating for an editorial piece, I have to read the article over and over and over again until unique connections just kind of start to organically happen. Also, when I'm researching, I like to find inspiration that has nothing to do with graphic design. I find when I'm looking inward at the graphic design community, I instantly feel stuck, like I can't move forward. And to be honest, this is by far the best part about being a designer and illustrator, because you get to step in these worlds that you wouldn't necessarily seek, and we also get to shape the things that people interact with, and the way they read an article or the way they visualize a company. And that to me is just a really important job. And okay, so once I've obsessed on a project for way too many hours, it's always followed by hard work. I always figure things out at like a sketching and writing level, but I find it's important to push myself and not just accept my best sketch or idea. Sometimes I'll just put too many ideas together on purpose. It gives me like unexpected directions, and at first seems a little weird and not right, but in the end becomes really nice surprises. And whenever I have to put hours together for any of my projects, it like stresses me out because if I were to be totally honest, I would never get any work. And to some degree, it's unjustifiable because I feel like once I start a project, I'm constantly thinking about it, and it's my filter for finding type or color or looking for answers to that problem. And you know, this isn't a clock in, clock out job for me. You know, I really believe strongly in finding good ideas as opposed to just coming up with them. And I don't think anything is precious, so I always start small, so I can throw things around, throw things off to the side, or bring new ideas in. It's much easier for me to design a poster at 3 inches on a sketchbook than it is for me to open up a big scary blank white document in Illustrator. Reflecting. So this happens in 2 ways. I usually step back during my process and try and reflect on what I'm doing. This allows me to edit down any bad ideas or measure it against what I'm actually doing, so when it comes time to present to the art director or client, it makes sense. I also reflect when a project's over. I think it's important for me to look at my process as a whole once I've finished, and it helps me grow and move forward, which is growth. This is important because I love what I do, and my values and my work come first. I'm hard on myself and my methods, and something doesn't seem to be working, I let it go and try not to repeat it. Because I'm constantly trying to look for ways to present myself and my work better to my clients. I also get bored quickly, so I'm like constantly looking for new ways to do something new for the next piece, so it doesn't feel like I'm just kind of repeating myself. And usually mistakes have the best answers. I never throw anything away. I just like hoard all these things and in hopes that like it'll blossom into something later, either a personal project or an art piece or more relevant for another client that I'm working on. Okay, so I've had full-time jobs at various agencies and design shops around town and in Philadelphia. I worked with great people, but I had this itch to just do it on my own. That, and I used to hear things like, don't give this project 100% of your energy, or you did such a great job this week that we nominated you for a PowerPoint this weekend, or, it's not all about the design. Sometimes it's about pleasing the client and growing the business. And I get it. These things kind of come with the territory of working full time, especially in a big shop. They have to have big accounts to survive, and those accounts have big tasks and small tasks, so those things need to get done. Good with the bad, I suppose. But those statements were really hard for me to handle because I take what I do very seriously, and I took it very personally. So whenever anybody asked me to do a PowerPoint or not put 100% of my time into my design, I'd get really pissed off, and we would clash, we would butt heads. So it's probably best that I'm on my own, actually. And I just think that we make things that shape our culture and our world, and it's a huge responsibility, and we should treat it that way, not just accept things as they are and follow the pack. And I've been on my own now for about a year, and it allows me to control the quality of my work as well as the work I take on. I'm lucky that I never have to take on work to fill like a monthly quota. Being a solo designer allows me to be a little bit choosy in the work I take on. And my downtime is filled with projects that make me a better designer and illustrator instead of doing a PowerPoint all weekend with an account intern. Because I believe good work gets you great work. This is my only business model. It's a simple thing, but it's very true. My business is graphic design and illustration. If I sacrifice any of that for even a moment, I'm doing this for all the wrong reasons. And you know, life is just too short to not enjoy what you do 100% of the time. So here's a chart of my time spent when I worked full time. You know, it was usually like 50% making other people's ideas pretty. So it was like surface design. It wasn't really design thinking. 20% actual interesting, fulfilling work. 10% personal work endeavors, which is, in my opinion, the most important part of this graph. And 20% PowerPoints and other like brainless tasks. So here's a chart of what my schedule looks like as of yesterday. You can see it's pretty much split in the 60% area between branding projects and illustration. And there's another 15% where it's like personal work and learning, websites and other like various design projects. You know, and time is very valuable, and no job is perfect, but I'm getting closer to where I want to be with my work by treating my time preciously. And when I was full-time, I wasn't doing projects I loved or wanted to do necessarily. It was just because I was on their dime, I had to. But now, on my own, I get to do projects like this. This is a recent illustration for Wired magazine, UK, on the one-to-one, buy one, give one business model that Tom Shoes originated. And again, it's a very simple concept, full of beautiful texture, and I really just enjoy doing editorial design or editorial illustration. So yeah, that was fun. Again, another Wired illustration. This one, the article is about this guy who wrote this book on how to form a proper startup, which I thought was hilarious, because I think, you know, it's kind of funny to cookie cutter startups, and I thought in my head it just sounded like this cheesy kind of outdated book that you read, but for some reason people are paying attention to them, so that's why it's all marked up. And this one, this is done for Harvard Business Review. It was a synthesis on books all related to who will be the world's next big superpower. My money's on China. Okay, so here's a New York Times op-ed piece. This op-ed was on how Kodak was leaving Rochester, New York, but the economy around there seemed to still be thriving. So again, it's very conceptual, very simple editorial illustration that really kind of just does it for me. And I'm really fortunate to be working on these things, and I don't take it for granted. And you know, sometimes I get to take on projects that don't pay well but are super creative. This band in California is super weird. They don't even have a guitarist, they just have 2 bass players. And the name of their band is Little Queenie. And they said, we want to look like a biker gang band. And I'm like, okay. And all I could think about with the name was like a bunch of chicks playing bass on the stage. So, you know, and when I started just kind of poking around and doing research, you know, what's more rad than the Queen of Spades? So that kind of was my first thought, and I just kind of massaged that into this. I didn't do a ton of rounds, you know, they weren't paying a lot, but I still put the time in, you know. And also, it looks like an insignia that you could see on, I don't know, a biker jacket. I also get to make some really kind of interesting graphic design as art. This one just kind of pokes at the idea of what we consider fresh food, fresh canned produce. It's just kind of a funny, stupid little thing. And I also get to collaborate with some really interesting, amazing artists like Mark Merman. The photographer, he photographs a bunch of bands and a bunch of rowdy scenes, and we get to do these little zines together for Hamburger Eyes, which is a publication. And you know, it's down and dirty, but I really love his aesthetic, and I get to play with like the placement of these images. So my job is like to come up with a cover and put these images next to one another that he wasn't thinking about. So in a way, it's like curating a little zine show. Look at that dude getting knocked the fuck out. And that's in Haiti. It's just really powerful images, and I just feel lucky that I get to play with them, and I get all these like high-res images from them, and I just feel honored. And then, you know, he's got some celebs in there. And then, you know, I try to not turn down free work whenever it's interesting. This is just done for the Wander project. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. Actually, I don't know a ton of it. I just know that like a lot of artists were like, hey, we're gonna do these postcards for this thing that Keenan has going on. So I kind of jumped on, and you know, this line was given to me, and so I had to think around it, which is much like an editorial piece. But life is a journey, not a destination. And I thought, well, it's a postcard for your iPad or your iPhone, and you use your map a lot, so these little kind of map pins are kind of neat. So I just wanted to kind of create a nice little piece around that. And you know, this has already kind of helped me land a big editorial illustration job that I'm working on now. So I think it's important to just constantly do what you love. You know, don't look at boundaries of are you getting paid, or are you know, doing this for Nike? Or, you know, sometimes just putting it out there is enough. And you know, I get to work on bigger projects that are more self-initiated as well. This is the area code project. So I'm cataloging all the US area codes in the form of posters. I also have flags, iPhone cases, and I'm working on some geographical maps at the moment and some patches. And it's a daunting project. It's going to be ongoing until I'm like 65, I'm sure. But you know, I have a lot of fun doing it. I hand painted all the numbers and then just kind of scanned them in, and then created like a nice little folio option so there's a consistency there. And these flags are really fun. They're just really old, tattered flags that I found in like flea markets, and then printed the state ID with all the area codes on that. And I got, you know, someone think, well, oh, you're ruining the flag, but actually I got the idea from old VFWs. They used to do this with their credo. They printed on like a stripe of the flag. So I think if they can do it, I'm allowed to do it. And I also got to build this beautiful, scalable e-com site with my good buddy Brett Burwell, who's an amazing developer. So if you're looking to make some sites, I suggest you reach out to him. And his wife Julie also helped me write a lot of the writing on this as well. So without them, I don't think I'd be able to get to where I got with it. And you know, I'm interested in design for design. So I wanted to make something that had no client but was just as challenging as any other design project. And I thought, well, a font. I've always wanted to make one, you know, not just one in Illustrator, but for real, like with kerning classes and metrics and all that stuff. And I'm getting pretty close, but it's a daunting project, and it just teaches you a lot about how tedious and ongoing this making a font really is. And it's also, I should note, it's based on the old Remington Rand logo, so there's some significance there. And you can see it in those letter forms on the bottom right. They're a little bit weird, but that was actually from the original logo, so you can see how it kind of transitioned from that to more of a cleaner sans serif. And my most recent endeavor, which I'm doing with my fiancée Nicole, is called the Haystack Department. So I think I'm not alone when I say this. Like, designers hoard away these beautiful things from flea markets that have type and imagery and things like that. And we all hope to use it, but sometimes they just kind of lay around and we use it as reference, but we never do anything with it. So I thought, well, let's just make it available in the form of high-res downloads. So we just kind of comb through weekly these old things that we've collected, and we make up these curations of things that we think designers might want or need to use. And it's good to just kind of do something that's about the design community, and we sell them for like dirt cheap, like $2. Okay, so take the long way. I'm going to talk you through a couple of my illustrations and about the process of the actual illustration. I don't take shortcuts. In fact, I'm really hard on myself, and I think it's because I'm always like seeking excitement in what I'm doing, or looking for those moments where my work feels new again. So I tend to like take the long way to see if I can find things that I haven't before. And here's another recent illustration I had done for Wired. Again, there's a lot of Wired because I've been recently on this tangent with them, which is great because they have really good writers and topics, so it allows me to be creative. But this one was on two ex-Saatchi and Saatchi guys wrote this article on if you're starting a company, you should invest $0 in your traditional ad budget because it doesn't work. People nowadays, word of mouth is stronger than ever because of social media, and they just don't trust ads. Whereas like in the 50s, the only way you know the difference between two detergents is what they said on those two different ads. So this is kind of appropriate, these big, loud pop-ups that are trying to get you into something or sell you something, saying long live advertising. And then all you really seem to focus in on is this white dialog box in the center that asks you if you want to skip this ad now or forever. And also, along with every illustration I've been doing with them, I do these little iPad animations. So once you like kind of turn the page, you get this quick little build of the illustration. So it's kind of a fun new thing that I've been playing with. I'm not a great animator by any means, but it's just fun to like break down my illustrations and figure out how to make them move appropriately. And because I've been working with Ben Fraser, who's the art director, for quite some time at this point, I don't need to show him sketches. Like he's just like, hey, you got this article, just do what you want to do, and let me see it. And if I don't like it, I'll tell you to go start over. So this is like what a mess looks like. This is what it looks like when I'm just kind of thinking about an idea, and not necessarily like showing ideas to a client in sketch form. So I kind of landed in that bottom area. It was kind of like a culmination of all that stuff, and I started to try and figure out how I was going to make it happen now. So I did a screen grab of all these like different dialog boxes, and it just, right now it looks very clean and crisp, but then when I take it to Kinko's and add some kind of Xerox magic to it, it starts to take on this like beautiful kind of weird juxtaposition between digital and print medium kind of world, which is awesome. And there it is again, looking more awesome. And then after that, I make some brayer work. This is a staple in my, I'd say, illustration process. I like to just, instead of like trying to go through some long Photoshop tutorial on how to make texture, I just make it and scan it and use it. I mean, why not? And I also have like a small Vandercook proofing press at home, so if I need to like incorporate type quickly into my illustration, it just takes a second for me to set some type up, ink it, roll it, and just do a one-off and then scan it. So that's kind of a level of like finesse and craft that I like to bring to my illustration work. But in this case, for this illustration, I thought it was appropriate to like go through some old magazines and like editorials and find just find the type and use it verbatim, like just cut it out and use it. So there's kind of like just a montage of the various type that I found. And my process is exhausting, so it's always tough when like I get like a really tight deadline, because I know I'm going to be like up all night working on it, but it's totally worth it. Okay, so this is done for Herb Lester. Herb Lester makes these like obscure maps of cities, so it's like maps for hipsters, basically. But like really, he has like a collection of really talented illustrators and designers working for him, and I was just honored to do one. So like as always, I start with a bunch of sketches, and this is actually sketches that I sent to the client, so they're a little bit more clean and thought out. And we ended up picking the bottom left one and the third one in, and we're like, let's do some sort of combination of that. And this is the first actual cover for it, which is really simple. I liked it. We were about to go, and that was the cover. Here's some line work for an illustrator. But I was out for a walk, and walked by this central camera sign, and I've always loved like just the type, and I loved even the colors. And I think I did a version where I tried to just take those colors and make it into something. And I felt like there was a tie back to what he was doing with his maps. His maps aren't for tourists; they're for people that want to see the side of Chicago that they want to see at Navy Pier. So I thought only people in Chicago really know what this sign looks like. So I thought it'd be cool to just try and bring that in to the design. So I went back and started kind of just ripping that sign off, basically, because it's just beautiful. And it's definitely taking a lot of reference from it. And then we ended up back here. And the cover never went away. We just used it for a little badge on the map side of the map. You get to do these. I got to do these like fun little spot illustrations as well, which is great. Okay, so New York Times. This is a recent piece I had done, and it was on the over-critiquing of Frank Gehry's design for Eisenhower's memorial. And the reason I want to talk about New York Times process, because I feel like there's nothing different about the process. It's just it's condensed to like 24 hours. So it usually starts with like an email. And I'll get an email from Matt Dorfman at like 3 p.m. on Wednesday, asking if I want to take on an op-ed illustration. And of course I say yes, even if I don't have time. It's just one of those things that I just love doing. And the email also states that the final is due by 2 p.m. Thursday, and will be running in Friday morning's paper. So you got to instantly start sketching and kind of stay up late. So this is sketch one for that, and it was supposed to take up a whole column and just be like this weird staggery column of like Eisenhower, and he's all worried at the top, like, oh, what the fuck are you guys doing in my memorial? So I really liked that one. And then this one was like a trash can with a bunch of crumbled up pieces of paper around it, but it had like a column on the top, simple. And then I like this one a lot, but Matt, it was wasted on Matt. I like Ike, but because the art director was like, I like it, but. And then this one, which is kind of like the staggering columns, but just more about the bust. Let's go this way, and so yeah, finally I got a winner, and it feels good. And now I'm like, oh fuck, I have like 3 hours to get it done. And then we ended up here. So it worked out, and I think Matt said that this rocks so much metal-loving, night-crawling ass, it's not even funny, to quote him. Okay. It was posted on like 3 pretty large blogs the following day, and one of those links was emailed to Richard Turley, who's the design director for Bloomberg Business Week. And that same day, I got a call from him asking if I want to do the cover for Bloomsburg. And this piece in particular has landed me plenty of other interesting editorial projects. So my advice is work hard, stay humble, and get your work out there because you never know who's watching. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Well done. It's probably my favorite part of the morning. We get to grill you. Now you have no room for presentation. Nothing is prepared. So obviously, can you go back to like your Bloomberg piece?
Sure.
Obviously, your work is beautiful. Nobody's doubting that. So maybe we can spin the Q&A less about how you make your design and more how you became the designer that you are. So first off, you mentioned in your talk earlier, you get bored a lot. My first question to you is, have you heard of Twitter?
Yes. Yes.
Where can we all follow you on Twitter, just so we can keep up with your ongoings you're doing?
Oh, it's at MCQ Tweets.
Okay, so you mentioned you get bored a lot. One thing that I have a question for you is, how do you know when it's time to move on? When you're bored, how do you know, okay, I need to stop doing this and try to move on to something new until I get bored with that?
That's a good question. I think, you know, my work is standing alone from project to project, but in the background, I look at everything as one big piece. You know, it's like, oh, well, I did this, but I don't want to do it here. So I think the transitions happen kind of organically, but I try and constantly stay aware of it. I don't, you know, whenever someone emails me to do an editorial piece and they're like, you know, I really like what you did here, can you do that? And, you know, it stresses me out because I don't want to necessarily do that. And I don't know what they mean by that, you know. So, and I feel like the more you keep doing the same old, the less relevant you become. And I think, you know, design and illustration is just a process. It's a lifelong process, and you continue to go. And that's, if you can't enjoy the process, then it's probably not a good path for you, you know.
Cool. So 2 more questions before we flip to the audience. I mean, you lived the life that a lot of us here are doing. You worked at agencies before. You worked for other people, and now you've graduated from making PowerPoints. But you make it sound easy, like, oh shit, I'm going to quit today and have clients like Wired and New York Times. When we know it's not that easy. So hold the phone. How the hell did you do that?
Yeah, no, it's not easy. You know, one, I've been prepping for it for about like 3 years. You know, financially, mentally. Just trying to work with as many people after hours as I could, kind of thing, and just really trying to figure out what it is I wanted. And then that ultimately led to going off on my own. And at first, when I went off my own, it was like these moments where you're like, oh, I just finished a job, I don't know what's coming up next. And it's scary, but it also has great rewards. You still work an insane amount of hours. Actually, I think I work even more hours than I did when I was at an agency, but it's all yours and you own it, so it's a good feeling.
Yeah, I mean, that's my last question. In looking at your life graph or your infographic of your day, the one thing I didn't see is like going to Rossi's, getting a beer and eating peanuts. Like, when do you like split up work time and you turn off your computer and you know, live a life?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think this is a tough question for me because I really am obsessed with graphic design and illustration, and you know, most people might look at it as a job. I just love type. I love illustration. I love looking at forms of visual communication that are like awkward or I don't know. I feel like I'm constantly working, even though I might not be like at my computer making something. So you know, when I'm out for a beer, you can probably count on it that I'm, you know.
You're looking at the type of a beer can?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're a nerd. So questions from the audience.
I have a question. You mentioned working on kind of lower paying work, possibly free, stuff like that. How do you make a decision between working on something for the betterment of your career versus cancerous spec work?
Mike, if you could repeat the question to the audience too.
So he's asking me, how do I choose free work? And I think the answer is, it's got to, like, I have to be interested. You know, that's my filter for everything. So if it's spec work and I'm interested, I'll do it. I'll dedicate the time. Or if it's like a one-off thing for a postcard project and I'm interested, I'll do it. But if it's merely to get ahead in some weird political way, I won't touch it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions? Yep.
It seems like the last couple of years you've come like such a long way from being employed to what you're doing. You've gotten so much recognition that I just kind of want to know, since so much has happened in such a short amount of time, where do you think you're going to be in a couple of years?
So she asked, since I've gone quite far in the past couple of years, and where do I think I'm going to go in the next couple of years? I don't know. You know, I definitely am interested in like just designing type. I think it would be a great full-time gig for me if I could work that out. And I'm also after the personal work. I think doing more art is kind of something I've been needing to spend some more time on. So maybe doing more like gallery shows and designing type and thinking about things like that. Ideally, something between like Hoffler and House Industries would be a perfect place kind of thing. But I think I wouldn't be able to do that alone. It would probably need to be a partnership with somebody or 3 or 4 people. So she asked the after hours work. Did I seek clients or how did I go about that in my process? You know, it was usually like I would work with somebody at a full-time job and they would know somebody that needed help, but they were like, yeah, you have a full-time job, so I don't know if you can do it. But if it was interesting, I would make time. And that's just it. Like, there's really no golden answer. It's just hard work, you know. It's like staying up late, missing those beers on the weekend, and just putting in the time. You know, that's kind of how I got there. But in terms of like emailing people and asking, like, I encourage you to do it. It's 50-50. Like sometimes people will respond to you and want to work with you, and sometimes it's just pure luck. Like they might have something right then and now that they need you to work on, and you just timed it perfectly, and it works out that way. But you know, most of the time, like any email you get from any stranger in your inbox at work, you kind of glaze over it, or you're like, oh, was this guy fucking annoying me? Leave me alone, kind of thing. So
Must be nice.
but you have to do it anyway.
What would you say is your underlying purpose to all of your work, as far as what you would want the viewer to take away from it? You know, and how do those two inform each other?
So he's asking, what is the underlying purpose of my work, and what do I want my audience to take away from it?
That's a deep question, dude.
It is, but I like it. I think, you know, I always tend to put like subtle things in my work, and I think the fun in it is like not prescribing to the viewer what that is, and just kind of seeing how they paint it. And that's the interesting part about my work to me, is like doing those dorky things that, you know, maybe someone will recognize, but your mom will just think it's pretty, and just, you know, see the differences in value, basically.
So everyone, thanks again for coming. I'm super stoked that people get up earlier than they do when they go to work. So that's pretty rad that you're all here today. If you are interested in coming to more Creative Mornings, they happen every month. We don't have an email blast. We don't have a Pinterest. All we do is tweet. You can head to CreativeMornings.com. You can see who the next speaker is. And like I said, our Twitter is Chicago_CM. You can follow us there. And if you guys have suggestions on speakers who you'd like to see, feel free to tweet us. And again, one more round of applause for Gensler and Arson for having us here. I also like to thank my volunteers, of course, who always help out. Joy Burke, who's been helping filter people in so that you guys aren't lost in this massive space. And you guys will all be on the internet, and it's all because of that guy right there, Chris Galevo. He's a really awesome photographer, so you can thank him for your next Facebook profile picture. And Eric and his buddy Steve have helped out in filming the day, so you guys will also be on the internet in video form. So smile to the camera, everyone. Thanks again to Eric and Steve on that. And other than that, everybody, have a good morning.